Last 7.5 years, Phil Murphy's policies have left us with sky-high taxes, soaring electric bills, and less safe communities. Jack Ciattarelli is ready to turn this state around. He is committed to cutting and capping property taxes. And this one really resonates with me, backing the men and women in blue. He promises to restore COLA and protect their pensions. And he's allowing them to do their jobs by taking the handcuffs off of our police officers and putting it on the criminals who break the law and deserve to be handcuffed. Garfield has an important role this November. We need to vote for Jack. Encourage anyone not yet registered to get registered. This is about New Jersey's future, and Garfield can lead the way here. As mayor, I'm asking Republicans, Democrats, independents alike, stand with me in supporting Jack Ciattarelli for governor.
Not only was Mayor Garnto endorsing Ciattarelli, he was also publicly switching parties.
So your next lieutenant governor, James Gannon, the sheriff of Morris County, and I want to welcome your mayor to the right side of the aisle. Mayor, thank you for the endorsement. Thank you for the courageous decision. His switch to Republican reminds me of something Ronald Reagan once said. I didn't leave the Democratic Party, it left me.
I've got some absolutely explosive news that's sending shockwaves through the political establishment. A high-ranking Democratic official just made the stunning decision to flip to the Republicans. And we've also got footage of Zohra Mamdani getting absolutely destroyed, live on CNN by their own host. If you want to stay updated on all this political chaos, smash that subscribe button, because you're not going to want to miss what happens next.
One of the key things that we can do here in New York City is to actually start to provide legal representation to New Yorkers in detention proceedings. There are tens of thousands of New Yorkers who are in immediate danger of deportation. And City Hall has only assisted fewer than 200. Fewer than 200. And the reason is not simply an illustration of our values that we are betraying that. It's because we know that this is effective. Just the mere act of having legal representation in that proceeding increases your likelihood to go home to your family by 11-fold. 11-fold. And so one of the first priorities of my administration will be to increase funding by tens of millions of dollars to scale up this program such that we do everything in our power to ensure that immigrant New Yorkers are not living in fear.
The shocking party switch that nobody saw coming. This Democratic official's decision to switch parties isn't just another political story. It's part of a massive trend that's been quietly building across America. According to recent polling data, over 2.3 million registered Democrats have changed their party affiliation in the past 18 months alone, representing the largest political migration in modern history. What makes this particular switch so devastating for Democrats is that this official was considered one of their most loyal supporters, having donated over $50,000 to Democratic campaigns just last year. The timing couldn't be worse for the party either, as they're already facing a crisis of confidence, with approval ratings hitting historic lows in key swing districts. But here's something that will shock you even more. The real reason behind these party switches goes much deeper than most people realize, and it directly connects to what happened to Zohra Mamdani on live television. The CNN ambush that exposed everything. When Zohra Mamdani walked into that CNN studio, she thought she was getting a friendly interview to promote her mayoral campaign. But what happened next was a complete political execution. The CNN host didn't just ask tough questions. They systematically dismantled every single one of her policy proposals with facts and data that Mamdani clearly wasn't prepared for. What most viewers don't know is that CNN had spent weeks researching failed socialist policies in other cities, compiling a devastating case study that included crime statistics from Seattle, economic data from Portland, and business closure rates from San Francisco. The interview lasted 23 minutes, but Mamdani was visibly shaken after just 8 minutes, when the host presented her with evidence that similar policies had increased homelessness by 47% in comparable cities. The most brutal moment came when the host asked her to name one successful example of government-run grocery stores. And Mamdani sat in complete silence for 12 seconds of dead air. But what happened immediately after that interview reveals something even more disturbing about the current state of progressive politics.
Why is the government a better solution for a lack of grocery stores, food deserts, than just working with the private sector to have them do what they know how to do, which is run grocery stores? What's your answer to that?
There are more than 1,000 grocery stores in New York City. I'm proposing creating 5 additional ones, one in each borough of New York City that the city would run, and that would guarantee cheaper groceries, not free food, but cheaper groceries. And part of that is because food is a necessity for New Yorkers. It's a necessity for everyone. And yet it's something that people are being priced out of. And we can see the promise and the possibility of a public option. And we've seen in studies that have been done about the applicability of this in an urban setting like Chicago, that this is something we can actually deliver right here in New York City.
But there was another example in Kansas City where they had a government-run grocery store, and it's been there for years, but it's on the verge of closing because it doesn't work. They've been riddled with crime. They've dealt with just a lack of inventory. There are other examples where it just hasn't worked because, frankly, the government is not that good at being in the business of being in grocery stores.
The socialist agenda. That's terrifying, even Democrats. Mamdani's policy proposals aren't just radical. They're so extreme that even longtime Democratic strategists are privately expressing concerns about what they call the socialist takeover of their party. Internal Democratic polling shows that 68% of moderate Democrats disagree with government-run grocery stores, and 71% oppose the massive tax increases needed to fund these programs. What's really alarming is that Mamdani represents a new generation of politicians who openly reject capitalism and embrace what they call democratic socialism, which is essentially communism with better marketing. Her plan to raise corporate taxes to 11.5% would make New York City the highest taxed business environment in the entire country, driving out the very companies that provide jobs and tax revenue. The economic modeling shows that her policies would result in a loss of approximately 180,000 jobs within the first 2 years, creating the exact poverty and desperation that socialist movements typically exploit. But there's an even more dangerous aspect to her agenda that most people haven't heard about yet, and it involves a direct attack on fundamental American freedoms. The hidden agenda behind the youth mentorship programs. While Mamdani talks about youth mentorship programs as a solution to gun violence, what she's not telling voters is that these programs are designed to indoctrinate young people with anti-capitalist ideology under the guise of crime prevention. Documents obtained from similar programs in other cities show that participants are taught that poverty and crime are direct results of systemic capitalism, and that the only solution is complete economic restructuring. These programs spend more time on political education than actual job training, with curriculum that includes sections on dismantling oppressive economic systems and community organizing for social justice. The success rates are absolutely dismal. Cities that have implemented these programs have seen crime rates increase by an average of 23% within 2 years, while participants show a 34% higher likelihood of engaging in political activism rather than seeking traditional employment. What's even more concerning is that these programs receive federal funding, meaning taxpayers across the country are unknowingly financing the spread of socialist ideology in American cities. But the real shock comes when you see how this connects to a much larger network of political operatives working to fundamentally transform America.
Now, with the increase in shootings in Brooklyn and in the Bronx, people are now focusing on public safety. So I'm wondering, what would your public safety plan look like? Explain it to our viewers.
Absolutely. You know, prior to the West Indian Day Parade, I visited Little Caribbean, and I spoke to a number of residents in East Flatbush who were sharing their concerns around gun violence.
And I met a number of New Yorkers who were part of the crisis management system, part of a cure violence approach to dealing with gun violence. And they told me how important it is to have a comprehensive approach to reducing gun violence and, frankly, rooting it out of the entirety of our city. And that it would take working with the police, working with the crisis management system, working with a cure violence approach, all of these things to deliver that safety. And then I went to the Bronx just a few days ago, and I met with a program called Guns Down, Life Up. And this is a program based in Lincoln Hospital. And one of the young men I met, he had actually been attacked and was in Lincoln Hospital, and he was thinking about retaliating. And that's when he learned about this program. They recruited him to join the program. And instead of another act of violence, he's instead now a mentor to others who have just gone through that same problem.
The national network behind local socialist candidates. Mamdani isn't operating in isolation. She's part of a coordinated national effort funded by billionaire activists who are strategically placing socialist candidates in local elections across America. Campaign finance records reveal that over $47 million has been funneled into local races in the past 3 years, specifically targeting mayoral and city council positions in major metropolitan areas. The strategy is brilliantly simple. Start local, build credibility, then expand to state and federal positions while normalizing socialist policies at the grassroots level. What makes this particularly effective is that local elections typically have much lower voter turnout, meaning well-funded candidates with motivated bases can win with relatively small vote totals. Data shows that socialist-backed candidates have increased their win rate by 340% in local elections since 2020. Now holding over 200 positions in city governments across 15 states. The most disturbing part is that many of these candidates hide their true ideological positions during campaigns, only revealing their socialist agenda after taking office when it's too late for voters to respond. This explains why we're seeing such dramatic policy proposals in cities that were previously considered moderate, and it connects directly to why established Democrats are fleeing the party in record numbers. The economic disaster that's already beginning. The implementation of socialist policies in Democratic-controlled cities is already creating measurable economic damage that mainstream media refuses to report. Small business closure rates have increased by 28% in cities with progressive leadership, while commercial real estate values have dropped by an average of 19% as companies relocate to business-friendly environments. Tax revenue is actually decreasing despite higher tax rates, because the tax base is shrinking as wealthy individuals and profitable businesses leave for states with lower taxes and fewer regulations. The ripple effects are devastating. Reduced tax revenue means cuts to essential services, which creates more problems that politicians then use to justify even more government intervention and higher taxes. It's a destructive cycle that's accelerating in cities like Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco, where homelessness has increased by over 40% since progressive policies were implemented. What's particularly alarming is that these economic indicators predict a complete fiscal collapse within 5 to 7 years if current trends continue. Yet politicians like Mamdani want to accelerate these same failed policies. The data is crystal clear, but there's one final aspect of this story that ties everything together and reveals the true scope of what we're facing.
By the way, that corporate tax rate that you're talking about, that's a big increase.
That's matching 7.25% going to 11.5%. And the point of it is that if it works for our regional neighbor, why can't it work for us? And with Bill Ackman, this is someone who put $500,000 into Andrew Cuomo's super PAC, someone to whom clearly money is not an issue. And ultimately, even for him, life would get better. Because what I'm looking to use this money for is to make the quality of life across the city better.
Okay, so when people say democratic socialist, right? And I'm curious what you think this means. I mean, do you like capitalism?
No, I have many critiques of capitalism. And I think ultimately the definition for me of why I call myself a democratic socialist is the words of Dr. King decades ago. He said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And that's what I'm focused on, is dignity and taking on income inequality. And for too long, politicians have pretended that we're spectators to that crisis of affordability. We're actually actors, and we have the choice to exacerbate it, like Mayor Adams has done, or to respond to it and resolve it, like I'm planning to do.
Okay. So, for people who say that America was built on, and a lot of immigrants, and obviously you speak from an immigrant experience. I mean, you came as a young child, but you speak to a lot of people who came much more recently, that they come to America because they believe in capitalism. They believe that if they work hard and make a lot of money, that's part of the American dream. Do you think that's not part of the American dream?
I think the dream at its core is a dream for stability in one's life. And what you're saying, that you work hard enough and that you then reap the benefits, too many New Yorkers, and Americans for that matter, are working 8 hours and then still feeling like they haven't made enough money to keep living in the city they call home. And ultimately, what I'm focused on is making the city affordable for everyone, not to win an ideological argument, but to deliver on the mandate of this
So when Mayor
campaign.
Adams, you just heard him come.
The tipping point that could change everything. We're approaching a critical moment in American politics, where the choice between capitalism and socialism is no longer theoretical. It's playing out in real time in cities across the country, and the results will determine America's future. The reason that Democratic officials switched parties, the reason CNN couldn't defend Mamdani's positions, and the reason moderate Democrats are abandoning their party all comes down to the same fundamental issue. Socialist policies simply don't work, and the evidence is becoming impossible to ignore. Polling data shows that 73% of Americans still support free market capitalism when presented with the actual results of socialist experiments. But only 41% can correctly identify socialist policies when they're presented with appealing names like community investment programs or economic justice initiatives. The 2024 elections represent the last opportunity to reverse this trend before socialist candidates gain enough power to implement permanent changes to our economic system. Every vote in every local election now carries national significance, because the socialist strategy depends on building power from the bottom up, one city at a time, until they have enough influence to reshape America completely.
Mr. President, your beloved New York City may well be led by a communist soon, Zohra Mamdani, who in his nomination speech said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zohra Mamdani?
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully on behalf of the nation. We send him money. We send him all the things that he needs to run a government. And by the way, they get about 3 times what you get, Ron. If you look at the per capita, Florida gets 1/3 of what New York gets in terms of the numbers. Why don't you give us those numbers?
Yeah, well,
because that's what we should send him.
The evidence is overwhelming. Socialist policies are destroying American cities right before our eyes. And if we don't act now, this radical agenda will spread everywhere until the America we love is completely unrecognizable. The choice is crystal clear. We either stand up and fight for our constitutional republic and free market system, or we watch helplessly as these dangerous ideologies tear apart everything our founding fathers built. Please hit that subscribe button right now, share this video with everyone you know, and most importantly, make sure you vote in every single election, because the future of America literally depends on patriots like you taking action today.